Hey everyone, welcome to this Matchpal webinar on VSLO and away rotations. We're going to be covering strategies and insights for applying to away rotations on VSLO, how to maximize your away rotation performance and convert it to residency match success. We hope you find this helpful.
Thanks everyone again for joining. We're going to cover everything about VSLO that you probably haven't heard about yet. So we have a lot of students on the call, a lot of different specialties of interest, and as such, we put together a panel of a lot of advisors from a lot of different fields to get questions that you guys probably need answers to, and to make sure that you hear it from people who did it to an incredible level themselves. So let's talk about the goals of today. We're going to talk everything about VSLO from the basics all the way to the strategies. We'll talk a little bit about away rotations in our breakout rooms. We'll talk about what you guys need to be focusing on now and, over the course of the next few months to make sure that you are choosing your programs, applying properly, and overall thinking about this whole process with your future career in mind. And then, like I said, we'll talk about, the specialty specific nuances along the way and also the breakout rooms at the end. So definitely be sure to stick around. With me today is a panel of 8 docs who are all outstanding and all part of the Matchpal team. So I think we'll go around and just do some introductions. And I think we'll start with Milena. And I think one thing I'll ask you guys when you guys are introducing yourselves is, why don't you go through the single biggest either misconception or mistake that you or you've seen a med student make about the away rotation or VSLO process? So Milena, why don't you get us started?
Hi, everybody. I'm Milena. I'm from California, currently a derm resident in Michigan in my TY year. I think the biggest misconception that I've seen students, or rather the biggest mistake I had or have seen, is them not doing their due diligence as far as researching the program and their application process before emailing the coordinator. So don't want to make that mistake.
Love it. That's absolutely critical. All right, Neri.
Hey, what's up, you guys? My name is Nairi, also from California. I'm in ophthalmology residency, PGY 3 at SUNY Downstate in Brooklyn, New York. The biggest misconception I've seen is, um, good question. Honestly, kind of piggybacking off what Melina said, when you do this research, a part of that also means looking into to see if DOs from either your program or just in general have ever been accepted into a way that you're applying to. Not to say that you'll never be the first DO. I mean, I was the first at mine, but I feel like you need to have some reaches and some safety net schools as well.
Absolutely. And I know we do have a very big DO audience today. And yeah, we'll definitely cover as much of the DO nuance as possible when it's relevant. So definitely great point there. All right, Ian.
Yeah, I'm Ian. I'm a radiology resident in Wisconsin, originally from Wisconsin. Yeah, I think there's definitely specialty specific nuances. So radiology, historically, away rotations haven't been as important as for surgical subspecialties. But even if you're in a subspecialty where maybe you're getting the advice from your school, oh, you don't need to do an away rotation, you're going to be fine. And away rotation is one of the biggest single tools you have for increasing your chances of an interview and furthermore increasing your chances of residency match at a particular program. So I think even if you're in a less competitive specialty and you have a place you really want to end up, don't be afraid to do an away rotation, even if you're coming from one of those specialties.
Absolutely. I echo that. All right, Nabil.
Hey everyone, my name's Nabil, based out of New York, ortho, and the biggest advice and kind of learning points from the past couple of years and from when I was a student is that there's times to do more and there's times to do less, and it's really important to know when is when.
I echo that 100%. Hey everyone, I'm Dan. I'm from New York City, also an interventional radiology resident on PGY4. I think one of the biggest underrated things is leveraging connections that you've made before you apply to aways to actually facilitate those aways. And I know that, we may have some MS2s in the call, mostly MS3s, but if you're an MS3 right now and you're thinking about where to apply, think about what mentors you have, whether they're residents, research PIs, anyone that you've come into contact with, and how you can tap those people in order to get you a slot at a place that you want to rotate at. It makes things so much easier when you have a valuable, real connection that you've already made that advocates for you on the other side. that goes for everything. That goes for ways, that goes for interviews, that goes for the match process itself, having people pick up the phone for you and, around a year from now when rank lists are coming in. So I think that's a very, very underrated part of this. And I'll pass it off to Serene.
Hi everyone, I'm Serene. I'm originally from Oklahoma and I'm currently in my intern year as an OBGYN resident in Oklahoma City. I think the biggest mistake I've seen or gotten lots of questions about is people assuming that all the programs are going to have away auditions on VSLO and not taking the time or effort to see if some programs are not or if they had a deadline that was prior. So that's something I learned as a MS3 and then have been passing that on as information because not everyone was available on VSLO.
All right. Absolutely true. Very hard to find those, but when you do, yeah. All right, Vinit.
Hey guys, my name is Vinit. I'm a third-year internal medicine resident at Pennsylvania Hospital, which is one of the UPenn Health System hospitals here in Philadelphia. I'm from Jersey originally. I think I echo basically everything that everyone else has said, and I think one of the biggest things that I learned in my own experience going through this was that if a program either offers you a rotation that you weren't looking forward to or says no, that doesn't mean totally no. I'm a big believer in reaching out and asking if there are other openings in different months or in different specialties that specifically for internal medicine that you might be interested in. And I've had many opportunities offered to me just in that way. So I think it's a good thing to take initiative and look for those kinds of things.
All right, last but not least, Ryan.
Hey, I'm Ryan. I'm a PGY1 at Loyola for anesthesiology, originally from Long Island. Just to kind of echo what Vinette said, definitely if you're accepted for an away rotation, you do have some wiggle room on the dates with most coordinators. Most coordinators are willing to work with you, especially if the program's interested in you as an applicant.
All right. So you guys got to meet everyone. Let's get into it. So I think we already kind of covered this, but I think the biggest point that I want to make to everyone here is that away rotations are so critical for matching that I mean I can't even believe that some schools like understate it. It's beyond me. But they're really the reason why I'm in interventional radiology as a DO. There's a reason why a lot of us had matched into competitive fields, especially as DOs. And I think this goes for anyone at any medical school. Like this is the time to showcase your work ethic, your talent, and your fit. And that's why we stress the importance of it. That's why we want to talk to you guys about it today. It is such a valuable opportunity for that. And also just to learn more about your specialty that you didn't get as an MS3 because you were either, didn't know enough or getting your feet wet, or maybe that specialty wasn't even offered to you at that institution, right? Like for me, like radiology or maybe even ortho, right? You're not getting that as an MS3 at most places. Those are things that like you're not rotating at. So you need to do in a way to even understand what it's like to practice in that. And I think with aways only become with this kind of like quote unquote like aways becoming the standard right now of like how almost every med student approaches their match cycle, thus they also become more competitive because now more people are applying for these slots. And so that's why it's really important to be on top of your stuff. I know VSLO as a platform is already open. So hopefully, you guys are already familiar with some of the kind of nuances of like how to use it. We're not going to cover how to click buttons. I think that should be pretty self-explanatory. You made it this far, you probably know how to do that. We're going to cover all the things that go into choosing programs, communicating with programs, the strategies behind it, and really understanding how to do that because I feel like that's the part that nobody actually talks about. So the number one question that we got when we put together this webinar is how many away rotations should you do? And I think the answer is it depends, right? I think it depends on what specialty you're looking at, what kind of locations you're talking about, and also what kind of an applicant you are, right? I think all three of those factor into the total number of aways that you're going to decide. When I decided to do an away, I was thinking about, do I want to do an away rotation at at a place that I really want to match at, or do I want to do an away rotation at a place that I'm going to go and get a strong letter of recommendation from, or some, combination of both? Is it going to be a place where I already have a mentor? So, I mean, I ended up doing 3 away rotations, and I think for IR, it is recommended to do that, at least 2 to 3. I think if you're going for the more surgical subspecialties, maybe Nabil, you can comment on what that would look like for ortho. And I know Milena wants to talk about what that looks like for derm as well.
Yeah, so derm is Unfortunately, very niche, and it has different requirements, whether you're an MD applicant or a DO applicant. I know my MD counterparts were very limited in the numbers they were able to do. Most schools only limit you to 1 to 2 from MD candidates. And then as a DO applicant, the average number of audition rotations is about like 5 to 10. And that's because they're about 1 to 2 weeks long each. So for those of you who want more information about that, I can go into more detail about it later on.
Yeah, ortho is a little bit similar, but also a little bit softer in terms of its requirements. I did 4 as an MD, and I know some of my DO counterparts did 6 to 7, and ours are a full month long. So that kind of limits you in terms of how many you can do. But is there a magic number? No, but statistics show that you will likely match at the place that you did a rotation at and that you signaled. So if you're thinking about what's worth it, that's probably the highest bang for your buck. To suck it up, do another one, 4 more weeks, not sleeping much, just do it again. It's going to increase your chances because the numbers are telling the truth.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think they do tend to correlate, but I think there's also, maybe, Nabil or anyone else can chime in here. There is a point where if you're burnt out and you're not showing the best version of yourself on those aways, that can go against you. So I think there's like a fine line to draw there, like especially
Yeah.
ortho aways can be especially grueling, right?
Yeah. You got to kind of like know yourself. Like by my fourth one, I was quite exhausted. I was like, I need to stop. I need a vacation. My feet hurt, all these things. But then there are some people who are in kind of like who are DOs. So you really, I will be honest that most DO ortho applicants do over 4. It's almost
Yeah.
every single one that I've seen. So that limits a lot of your elective time and kind of eats into chill time during fourth year. And there have been students who rotate all the way into December of their fourth year for ortho as a DO applicant. So it is extremely difficult. But yeah, the worst thing you can do is not do well on a rotation.
Right.
So you got to know
Right.
yourself in that respect.
Right, because now you got a chance to showcase, and then you fumbled it, and so now you're not, now they're like, all right, well, they know that you're definitely not going to be good. Versus like if you just applied and never rotated, they don't know that. They're just like, oh, this guy got a 250, did a good job on his boards, he's got publications, let's give him an interview, right? Versus a bad away can definitely dox you. So that actually is very important to consider for those of us considering surgical subspecialties where the ways are more tough, moving around a lot. Also, like even if you're doing like the derma ways and you're doing 1 week or 2, but you're just moving every week, changing environments, getting to know different people, it is very, very exhausting. By the way, I love that you guys are dropping questions in the chat. Keep dropping them. We'll try to answer them as we go along. I think Daniel Lamb, you asked a great question about performing on a ways. We can table that to the end or to the breakout room once we kind of get through all the logistics stuff first. Okay. So hopefully you guys kind of get an idea. We'll cover more of this. I think the timeline is equally important. So not only do you have to know how many aways ballpark you want to be going for, but also how to actually do it, right? So hopefully, like I said, you guys have access to your actual VSLO accounts from your school. There's something that your school has to give you access to, and most schools in the US participate in VSLO, so they give you access to it. Now, in there, you have to like a lot of different parts, right? There's the stuff that your school fills out. They have to like upload a transcript. You have to put in a headshot. You should definitely submit like a good bio, right? Your bio should have a little bit about who you are, maybe like a 1 or 2 liner about why you want to go into the field, and then maybe like a 1 or 2 liner about like your hobbies, interests, etc. I think those are very useful things to include in there. And then we will also talk about, personal statements for away rotations. We have a slide on that coming up. Once the actual aways open, which is something that we'll talk about in a second, like you want to be the first one to apply. We're going to emphasize that numerous times here. You have to be, if you're not early or late, it's like one of those things. And it is like a rolling admission. So they're going to give out all the slots to the people that actually apply early. So be sure that you're accounting for the timing. And like, if that means working through this upcoming, weekend to getting everything ready so that if you are looking at programs that open earlier than March, you're ready to go. Is anyone on the panel that wants to talk about is if your specialty does specifically like earlier timing or anything considering like, timelines in general for med students to be thinking about?
Yeah, I could go on about that. So for those of you that are interested in ophthalmology, so we do an SF match. It's an earlier match than the ERAS match that everyone else does. So our timeline is just shifted a little bit earlier, not by much, honestly. But just to give you a quick rundown, our deadlines for submission are just about a month earlier than ERAS, and our results come in about a month earlier, a month and a half earlier than ERAS. So that means that you need to look into the programs that you want to go to, like the second half of your third year, kind of compile a list, figure all that out, have all the, program specific paperwork done and ready to go so you can apply sooner. Some of them still won't let you know until April and May, which is kind of around the time that a lot of the ERAS programs let you know, but some of them did let me know in April, even as early as February, and I was able to lock down some away rotations that way as well. Especially the ones that aren't on VSLO, as someone mentioned earlier. Those are on a completely different timeline that you need to figure out by reaching out to them directly. And it is hard to do that and it's hard to find. But once you do, those are some golden programs that could be a huge, huge benefit for you because a lot of them are 2 weeks long too, which can just increase your amount of aways, like your pure numbers.
Absolutely. And I think the golden time, also, I think we had questions about this, and we're going to talk about it later again. But the golden time to apply for those aways is July to October. Okay. You want to get as many aways in during those 4 months as possible. Ideally, July to September, which does also mean for most of you guys, you're going to take step two in June. Okay. So plan, like, this is the timeline that you need to plan now. You're taking step two in June. You're getting your first away for July, August, September. You got 3 aways before ERAS even opens. You have a chance to get multiple letters of rec before ERAS is open and make great impressions. And then again, if you want to keep doing them into October, November, you can, but don't forget, you're not going to get letters of rec from rotations that you did in October and November. That's like a pure, like, I'm just here to impress this one site. There's no other benefit that those aways give you, which is still important, but they're obviously less valuable. So that's just something that we want to make you guys aware of that I think people don't really cover for the most part. So yeah, thinking about timing, did anyone here on the panel do away rotations past ERAS? I know I did. I had July, August, then I had a research block, and then I did one in September. So like it like bled. It was like mid-September to mid-October. And we could talk about like the timing, which is like a really annoying thing. It's like the block, like your school's schedule may not align with the program schedule. And that was something that I dealt with. And I think someone mentioned it earlier. Like, programs are very receptive. Like, if they invited you for an away, they clearly are interested in you. They've already showcased that. They're like, this is someone who we can reasonably see in our program based on what we have from their, VSLO application. So emailing that person back promptly, usually the coordinator, and saying, hey, this is like my school schedule is like aligned on different dates. Is there any chance that these dates or these dates would work? Like, make their life easy. Okay. Don't make them offer you slots that then you still can't do. Tell them exactly, these are the dates that I have open. I have like 3 slots open. Can I take any of them? I'd be happy to come. Right. So make the program coordinator's life easy. They'll remember you for it. They'll also be much more flexible with you. But yeah, I don't know. Did anyone else have scheduling issues or do like away rotations like later in the cycle?
Yeah, I actually had scheduling issues. And so what I did is that I got a away rotation offer, and then I got another one, and they were kind of overlapping by 1 week. And I was actually able to negotiate with one of the coordinators if I could do one of the rotations over 3 weeks. And that let me kind of start. I was maybe like a week off from everyone else, but 3 weeks was enough for me to kind of make my impression at the program and then make an impact, which would have been better. It's better than just the interview being your only impact on the program.
I agree with Ryan. I also had a similar situation. Sometimes people don't know that you can try to even shorten the rotation if you were taken for a 4-week rotation. Sometimes the coordinators will be amenable to 3-week or 2-week sort of thing. And I did do some later in the year, like in the November, December time, but that was only really at programs that I was thinking about ranking highly and that I really, really wanted to impress and have an interview at.
Yeah, I would kind of provide almost a counter to that, just because orthopedics unfortunately can be quite strict they are not going to budge for you sometimes. And you will ask, and it's not like, oh, you asked and they said no, and now you're completely banned for life. And it's not that serious, but the flexibility is not necessarily always there because usually there's a lot of applicants for those slots, and if you don't fit in, else will fit in. So I wouldn't be surprised if you tried and unfortunately it didn't work out. It's not a personal thing. It's just that it's competitive. And uh, what happened with me is that I really wanted a certain rotation. It overlapped with something at school. And so I didn't ask the program to move. I asked my school, give me some leeway here, please. So there are two sides of it. Can you ask the other party instead of the rotation to make accommodations? And that could be like a slicker move at first to see if you can manage on your own.
I think that's a beautiful pearl right there. You know, if you can make it work with the program, make it work with the school, especially if it's like a top choice place for you. Like make it happen at all costs. I'm a big believer in that, and I think that that's sage. All right, so we talked about the scheduling and the timing, but like, what does the program actually look for, right? I think, you know, this obviously this pie chart is data that we kind of pulled from our experience. I think every program obviously looks at things a little bit differently. But I think the main take home points that I want to give you is that connections to the program matter, which is something that I already stressed earlier. And I think if a program asks for a personal statement or letters of rec to rotate, it is critical that those are really, really strong, right? Not every program does this. So there are a lot of programs that are just kind of like, you know, they're okay with you, you know, they're just kind of like, they're not using this stuff. They don't ask you to submit it. But I think more and more this year I'm seeing already a lot more programs are asking for personal statements. And I think it's a filter. It's a way for them to see like who you are, how badly do you actually want to come here, and how well can you prove that in a very short fashion. Now, I think the VSLO personal statement, especially when we work with our students, like it's not supposed to be as in depth or as long as the ERAS personal statement. It probably is going to be a rough draft for what you use down the road. And I always tell people like this is like your building blocks. It still needs to be polished. I think it needs to be shorter. I think this is a 3-paragraph thing. You just talk about the specialty, the program, and what you bring to the table. Those are the things that I want you guys to really focus on if you're applying to programs that need a personal statement, because they will read this, even if it's just the coordinator, because a lot of times it's not necessarily the faculty or even the PD that's reading these, but it's like the coordinator who's like, all right, does this person actually know what we're about? Do they have a legitimate desire and reason that they've stated that like makes them a good fit to potentially come here, and like why they want to come here? Like, do they know the program well enough? Did they do their research? Do they know someone here? And then what about them is the thing that is going to like be a valuable addition to like the future residency cohort. So I think that is like super critical. And then you'll polish that and revise it numerous times as the cycle goes on when you submit it for ERAS. And maybe your ERAS statement will look completely different by the time you do that. But I think this is a really good framework that I give everyone to just get started on writing this. And again, like I said, this is a really high stakes thing. Like a bad personal statement, again, you're thinking about it like step one, level one is pass fail. Okay. You might have, okay, sure, you might have your med school transcripts, or sure, you might have your academics to support you. But really, most of us, aside from our seat, you know, aside from like our research and whatever, are kind of coming in on a very level playing field. So the personal statement is a huge opportunity to distinguish yourself. So it's very important to take it seriously and to personalize them to every single program that you're sending an application into. Anyone want to comment on if you guys talk about like your insights from how your program picks away rotators, or what you learned when working with some of our students over the past few cycles?
Yeah, I think I could elaborate. Oh, sorry.
go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, no, I think for anesthesia, I could definitely speak that this, when they do ask for it, it matters a lot. And I think something I just noticed with students that I've worked with in the past is that when they try to find like reasons why this program, they're often grasping at more maybe superficial things like, oh, it's a level 1 trauma center, or very superficial characteristics about the hospital. But I think what matters more is really speaking about like the area that the hospital exists in. Do they work with patient populations? I know for example, a New York City program, you're working with patients that speak multiple languages. Like saying that you're willing to do that extra level as a future resident, or just saying that you even have experience doing that, that could be the difference between you getting a offer for the program for a way rotation or interview.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I think something else to help avoid that superficialness and echoing what Dan said earlier is like leverage your connections or make that connection. DM a resident from that program on Instagram, be like, hey, I would love to set up a call with you to like hear about your experience in this program. I'm seriously considering it. And then you're going to get a personal tidbit that you can use in your why this specialty, why this program in your audition application. And I am one of the ones reviewing them for my program. And anytime I see that, it shows me like a student took time to learn about us more than just on our website. And that really sets you apart.
Yes. And although I'm not necessarily advocating for people to spam residents, I think that any effort to learn about the program is absolutely huge. I think, again, I go back to my time. Most of the connections that I made were like through research. And I think I leveraged every single person that I did research with. I was like, hey, can I come rotate? Can you like, if I didn't rotate and it was interview season, I asked them if they can like pull for me to get an interview. That did work at actually 2 places. So like those connections matter a lot. And so even if you don't have connections now that you can use for VSLO, you can absolutely continue to build that pool and leverage it for interview season and the match in the coming months. So definitely keep that in mind. Anyone else have anything about like program selection, candidate selection for the rotation?
I did want to say one thing, especially about OBGYN. It's becoming super competitive, and a lot of the audition and away rotation spots are getting filled up pretty quickly. And so usually all of the OBGYN programs do require like a small why this specialty, why this program, little synopsis, and they do truly take that into consideration when they're choosing you over someone else as an auditioner. So I feel like especially if you're interested in OBGYN, you might as well go ahead and start working on why are you interested in this specialty? Why do you want to come to this program specifically? And if you don't necessarily have connections, go to the website, read their mission and vision statement. Go look up the residents on Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is, and see if you can learn about the program that way. If you don't want to necessarily go and try to contact them and talk to them in that manner, you can learn a lot about a program just through learning more about the residents themselves.
Yeah. And the social media, right? I think the programs, a lot of programs are on social media and they're showcasing their different aspects that they highlight about the program, about the residents, about their wellness events, about whatever it is that their simulation lab, whatever it is that they're doing. Learn about it. You could talk about it in an interview. You could talk about it when you're rotating there. Like these are all valuable things to come in. Like, you have to prep for this as like, you have to be as strategic as possible. And the more of that information you have, the better off you're going to be. All right. So the question that we get a lot also is how many do you apply for? Right. And this has been blowing up in the chat. We got like 40 questions about this just in the signups alone. So we definitely wanted to cover this. And again, I think this is going to depend, right? This is going to depend on the number of programs. So I think the average person for the average specialty the average person on this call applying for most specialties, you're going to think about applying to usually like about 10 sites. That's my like blanket advice. If I don't know who you are, what specialty, or what your CV looks like, I'm telling you, think about 10 sites to start and aim for, anywhere, I would say like 3 to 4, maybe 5 per month, per actual like slot that you have. Okay. So how do you distribute that is very important. You don't want to apply to 10 safeties because then you're like, maybe you're not going to get your full potential. You might not get access to that program that is maybe above your, the reach program, which you should try for. And you don't want to apply all reach because there's a chance you don't get any. So you want to just kind of spread this out very, very strategically. So thinking about, places that your school has sent people to, places that people have matched into from your school, places that have taken DOs, if you're a DO, places that are, being very realistic, like what is a reach program, right? Even if they've taken a DO, like was it one person in the last 5 years or was it 4 DOs every year, right? That's very different. That's a very different type of program. I think these are all factors that you want to take into account when you're looking at the list. My number one thing that I always tell people is like, make sure that geography is important, right? Because we already know away rotations are a huge contributor to match outcome. So if you already know that getting it away somewhere increases your chances of interviewing, increases your chances of matching there, then you also need to think about, well, what actually happens if I match there, right? Now, I think Ian's a great guy and he lives in Wisconsin, but I'm from New York and my family's here, my friends are here. I didn't really want to go to Wisconsin, even though Ian goes to a phenomenal residency program, which probably would have been a reach for me. That was still not a good fit for me. So even though going there and I would have had a great learning experience and I would have had a great letter of rec, I don't think that wasn't the best fit for me to do a rotation there, because if I did end up there, it wouldn't be as happy as I would be ending up here in New York, which is where I did end up. So I think factoring that into the equation is very important, because down the road, you are going to end up signing a contract for 3 to 7 years of your life to live in a certain place. And putting those rotations at sites that you're going to actually be happy at is, one, going to make your future self way, way happier. And just like, your wellness score is going to go up through the roof. And then two, you're going to have a much more like natural way to sell yourself to that program, because it's much easier for me as a New Yorker to tell the programs in New York that everyone's here and I have connections here and I'll be well supported here. Like it's much easier for me to sell them on that than to sell them that I'm moving across the country somewhere that I have no one. Just, you know what I mean? Like it's harder. So I think that's one thing that I always stress, like for VSLO, for ERAS, like be very selective with the locations that you're choosing, just as much as you are the prestige of the program and all those other aspects that we've been talking about. I know we have a lot of different specialties being represented on this call, so I know this is going to vary. So I'm very curious to hear if maybe anyone from one of the other fields wants to add to this.
Yeah, I could kind of toss a little something here. So I kind of played it a little bit more safe than what this slide demonstrates. Almost every single one of my programs, I would say, were target to safety. And then I had one reach that I last second decided to pull the trigger on and ended up matching at. Um, and that's just because that's the way I decided to play it. I was like, I want to maximize my chances in completely as someone applying into ophthalmology. And so that's what I did. I also think it's important to mention that even though it's not that big of a thing anymore, back in 2018, the DO and MD applications, they merged, right? So we all applied to the same type of applications now when we were applying to residency. But there are still, quote unquote, historic DO programs that look more kindly to osteopathic graduates. So for those that are osteopathic grads, there are papers out there that tell you which programs were historic DOs that now also accept MDs, but still favor DOs. And those are definitely programs that I recommend at least showing your face to one of, because that will almost guarantee you an interview as well. Because a lot of these programs won't interview you if you don't go there.
Yeah, I would have to say that that's totally correct, that you have to understand the likelihood of DO acceptance if you are a DO and weigh that heavily over maybe sometimes location preference if the goal in the end is to match and match anywhere. For me, I didn't want to leave the East Coast, and I basically went as hard as I could with New York uh, programs. New York rotations is where I had all of my connections, and I took a risk, and all my rotations were in New York, whether it's the city, Long Island, or kind of around. And I ranked almost all New York places, signaled all New York places. So it's also because it was just very important to me because my family's here and um, like my whole life is here, and I didn't want to give that up for a residency. Um, but obviously it worked out, but it could have not worked out. So it's about weighing your priorities and balances, and sometimes maybe taking a risk depending on where you think you stand as an applicant, whether you can take that risk or you can't.
Yeah. And I think that's so true. I think there's going to be many people on this call right now that are thinking about a competitive specialty, and they would rather do that than be in any specific part of the country. And that is totally fine. You are allowed to do that. We're trying to give advice that kind of is applicable to the average person for most people. And most people do have ties to specific areas, whether it's significant others or family or whatever. But there are people that under no like they want to be an orthopedic surgeon. They're going to go anywhere for it. And if that's you, then you absolutely should follow that path, right? That's totally fine. All right, cool. Let's keep going. So we have a lot of things that we see on our side when working with students that can really mess up their chances of getting the spot they want. And honestly, there's like this ripple effect downstream onto your interview yield and match outcome that comes from this stuff. So we covered a lot of this, right? Being early, having a really focused statement, the away rotation performance, which is really what I want to talk about, actually performing on your sub I, which is going to look a little bit different for some of the fields, but I think there's some key principles that still translate across the board. And then I think overlapping dates is a big question that we've gotten. So we'll talk about that as well. So maybe we'll talk about performance. So maybe, I could start with IR. I think IR, we treat it as a surgical subspecialty. So if you're thinking about anything surgical, what I'm about to say, this is for you. So, when you're on a surgical service, you're obviously, the goal is not for you to be operating. I just want to make that clear, right? That's not the goal of your training as a sub-I or a med student. The goal is, can you work well under a high pressure team in a new environment? And can you learn both the knowledge needed to do this job well, very fast? And can you figure out ways to add value to the team that improves the workflow and efficiency and the patient throughput and patient safety without getting in the way, and also knowing when to back off and get out of the way when your help is not necessarily needed. Okay. Those are your core goals for doing a great job on an away rotation. And I think my surgical colleagues on this call probably agree. I've seen students who are just, they just get it, right? They show up on day one. They clearly like did some pre-reading. They know the basics of the specialty, hopefully more, but they at least know the fundamentals. They ask thoughtful questions. They help move patients on and off the table. They help prep the room. They get supplies, once they figure out like where those are located and whatever. Like that is what makes a rock star sub-I. The person that kind of sits around is waiting to be told what to do, can't really come up with any like meaningful contribution as far as like, working up a consult or asking a thoughtful question. Those are the people that we automatically are kind of like very wary of. We're like, I don't know about this, right? And by the way, this is the kind of stuff that tanks people who score like 250 plus, right? You can have any score you want. If you show up and you're like either really unpleasant to work with or just downright like not enthusiastic and not helpful, that negates everything that your application says, like completely, right? So keep that in mind, like prepping for and showing up every day like it's literally a fight and you're trying to win as the victor is really important, especially for the surgical away rotations. And I will add that most of the time, you are not the only person rotating. So you're not only being evaluated independently, you're also being evaluated relative to these other people. And there's this fine line that you have to draw where you have to perform better than them, but also be professional and not bring anyone down, right? And not be like, not be mean and not like screw anyone over, because people pick up on that too, and that's also a huge red flag. So this is like that's like my kind of TED talk on rotation performance. And I'm curious to know if maybe maybe someone from a non-surgical field can maybe give a little insight on it. Ian, maybe you could talk about like radiology. I know radiology is like very different, but I feel like you got some pearls for that too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you're thinking about like rotation performance on a rotation where you're generally not going to have as much responsibility, you're not going to be carrying patients. A lot of it is like, how do you gel with a service or a resident? How do you like kind of work your way into that workflow without being like distracting? How do you ask good questions without like derailing the residents' like reading process? So I think this could go for pretty much any away rotation in which you're put into a situation where you're like not given responsibility, you're like forced to be more of a passive learner. You have to like figure out how to essentially be positive, be engaged, be interested, keep the vibes good, ask good questions at the right time when it's kind of like a little bit more obvious that like the person's open for questions or in a good spot in the workflow where it's not going to be totally derailing to patient care. And yeah, it's really tough to navigate, but it's essentially just like have good social skills is like what some of those rotations are testing. And can you like project that you're interested in the specialty for an extended amount of time until you're dismissed for the day. So radiology is like pretty different. If you're able to like show that you're knowledgeable of like the residents asking you questions, that also is like cool. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I think it's mostly those like soft social skills and those kinds of specialties.
Yeah, I think like this is kind of like the hill that I'm going to stand on. because I think sub-Is, especially in orthopedics, is do or die. And I think that one of the main things is that you just have to think of this as you're not a student, you are a working member of society, and this is a job interview. And every single moment, every interaction, all the way from cleaning staff to the OR staff to uh, like different specialties that you see in the hallway, your co-resident, sorry, your co-medical students, like every single thing is being looked at. I know that feels like a lot of pressure, and you guys are good people. You guys can be doctors. It's not like you're like bad people that you're going to do something wrong, but like just always remember that this is a job interview and there's no ifs, ands, buts about it. And I think that another thing is that what I really like about our platform is that sometimes you just need someone to tell you what to do. And that's why we have mentors. And that's why some kids walk in and they know exactly what to do, and some don't. Just ask your fourth years. Text the resident, find someone. Be like, hey, I'm going to my first rotation. I've never done this before. I don't know what to do. What should I bring? What should I wear? What should I have in my car? How do I introduce myself to surgeons? And how do I, like all these small questions that you don't like, you're not born knowing the answers to these questions, but that's why we have mentors. That's why you have this platform. Just keep asking because someone will answer, and that tidbit is going to make you stand out from the person right next to you. And that could be as simply as saying thank you. Like that's it. So you just have to be really, really thoughtful about who you are, being self-aware, and trying your best to be as great as possible. And you guys already are. So I think just mentorship can really help.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest things we try to help with all of our, mentees is like prepping them so that they walk into the first away already performing at the level that someone's on like their third away at. Like that's like super, super critical. I know overlapping dates, we definitely talked about that in the chat a little bit, but you know, you're gonna end up applying for all these like multiple sites for multiple dates. I think the core thing that you want to keep in mind is that the second you get one site locked in, you got confirmation that site A took you for August. Withdraw every single other application from August immediately, like as soon as possible. Because the last thing you want is two offers to come in for the same slot, and now you have to deal with it, which you can. It's possible, but it can also lead to issues, right? I'll give you an example. I had that happen to me. I had a program offer me a slot. Basically, I actually didn't. I had a slot scheduled, and I forgot to withdraw, right? Because nobody told me this. And in that moment, like about a week later, another program said, "Hey, we'd love to have you. Come by for September." And now I have to like explain to them why I can't come in September, right? And why I didn't like let them know or withdraw the application. And so kind of navigating this is kind of a very like to balancing act. I think you have to just be very forthcoming. I think you don't have to necessarily disclose that you already accepted another offer. I think you can keep it vague and say, I now have a scheduling conflict with my like a required rotation or, with my school. I actually can't make it then, but I still am available for these other dates. Is there any chance that you have an availability? And if so, I'd love to, I will happily accept it right now. But you want to try to avoid that, right? Because guess what? That program, even though it was a safety program for me, did not interview me because they did not have any other dates for me, and I did not accept that away. So be very wise with being on top of this. Okay. So even though we are advising you right now, this is definitely like I think everybody on this call would agree. You kind of to optimize your chances, you have to apply for multiple sites for every single slot, but you have to also do your part in withdrawing the second you get an offer to avoid getting into this sticky situation, right? I think the question that I just saw that was if you're waiting for another program. So, I mean, that's on you. Like you can definitely wait. I think if you're gonna drop in a way, if you're gonna drop in a way that was already offered to you for another place, I mean, I would call into question whether you really want to rotate there in the first place. I think if if you apply, that's the whole point of being strategic with where you're applying is like you would be theoretically excited to go to any of these 10 or 15 programs that you apply to. So I don't think dropping in a way, I think that's like guaranteed. Like if you schedule in a way and then drop it, you're done. Like you're probably not interviewing there. You're not, you're out of the race. So it's not good practice. I don't advise it. I think it's way better to just take what you get and then see if the other sites give you for your other slots. That's my blanket kind of thing. And no, you only withdraw for a specific date. You can literally just withdraw from one date. You don't have to pull the whole site out of or all the other places out of your application. And I think the other thing I'll mention is following up, right? So I think being involved with research or staying connected with PDs or whatever, I think this is super, super critical. And this goes for even on service too. I think one thing that nobody talks about is like, how do you actually, network on the rotation? I think people think that you're going to show up to this rotation and like they like roll out the red carpet for you and they're like, oh, this is the sub-I. Like half the time nobody's even like made aware of like who you are. You just show up there and and you're like, hey, I'm the med student. They're like, who are you? Where are you from? Like what? Like nobody knows anything about you, right? And there's no like guaranteed mentorship or meeting with the PD. There's no guaranteed like anything really. You have to kind of build that out for yourself in most of these away rotation experiences. So like I remember one of the things that I did that I think worked really well is almost always on the first day of the rotation, I tried to find the PD wherever they were. And remember, these are people like they might not even be scheduled on the service with you for your whole month. They could be on an outpatient side and you're on the inpatient side. They could be on vacation. Like you have to figure out how to find these people. Okay. Make it a point to meet with them, knock on the door, shake a hand, look them in the eye and say, hey, I'm a fourth year. I go here. I'm here for the next month. I'm super excited to be here. Just wanted to introduce myself. And I hope that I can like make a great impression on you guys. This is one of my top choice programs. And that's it, right? And then later, 2 weeks later, you do it again and you say, hey, just wanted to check in. I wanted to know if you had any feedback for my performance from any of the other faculty. I know we didn't get a chance to work together so much, but if there's anything that I could do to improve, I would really love to hear it because I really want to show you guys that I want to be here. And, I'm really open to like constructive feedback. And then on the last day, you do it again and you show up and you say, hey, I had an amazing month here. I love this, and that about the program. I learned so much here. You have an amazing team, amazing residents. Are you willing to write me a strong letter of rec, either you or maybe a composite letter from the faculty here? I think it would be really helpful for my application. And I really look forward to kind of staying in contact with you guys throughout interview season. That's how you handle that process. Literally, nobody's ever told me that in my life. It was something like, this is something that like, I can't believe that students don't do. Because when I started mentoring people, I was like, oh, you guys just like spent a month there and you didn't talk to the PD or the APD. You just like, what did you do? Like you missed the whole opportunity of maximizing this. So make sure you're doing that too. Anybody else want to add on networking, following up, communication during rotations, anything of that nature?
I would also say just don't forget to network with the residents themselves. Like make an effort to get to know them, talk to them, build a relationship with them because you can ask them questions and use them as a resource during your process. And honestly, they might be the ones advocating for you more than anyone else on your behalf during the application process on their side. So it's really important to kind of let them know who you are, show that you're making an effort, wanting to get to know them as well, so that they are advocating for you when it comes time to rank lists and choosing who they want to actually come to their program.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we go through we in my program, we don't pick the away rotators, but we absolutely participate in interviews and in like applicant selection for rank list. And one of the biggest things is like when we have the faces all up on the thing from the interview day, and like there's like one or two people that rotated with us, we all as residents are very, very quick to be very vocal about who we support and who we don't, regardless of what their application looks like, how well they interviewed. There's been people that we have like gone do not rank because they had a bad away rotation performance that maybe only I noticed. There's literally someone that happened to this year. There's someone that rotated with us that I thought was not good. And I was like, he interviewed pretty well. And people were like, yeah, he's like an 8 out of 10, 8.5 out of 10. They're like giving like really strong scores. And I was like, guys, I'm sorry, I'm not like, there's no way, right? Like there's these other people that rotated, they blew them out the water. Like this is just not the type of person that we want here. And people will do that for the bad side and people will do that for the good side, right? If somebody does a phenomenal job, they will absolutely say that, wow, this person was a rock star. Like this is exactly the type of person we will be honored to have a person like that in our program. So keep that in mind. Everyone's listening. And that goes for, like, I think Nabil mentioned this earlier. This is not just residents and faculty. This is program coordinators, how you email them. We've had people not ranked because of how they emailed their program coordinator because it wasn't professional or it wasn't timely or it was just something about it was off. How you interact with nursing, ACPs, like all of these people can make or break you. So best behavior across the board. All right. So I think we covered everything. I think we're ready for breakouts. Before we get into that, we're going to talk a little bit about the team and who we are. I think a lot of you guys don't know us, but basically we have a team of over 60 residents and we cover everything from VSLO to match day with our advising students. And we cover a ton of tutoring with students from all over the country. We were doing this for like 4 years now. We've worked with over 1,000 students. And in addition to putting together resources like this and the stuff we see on our socials, we work with students one-on-one. And so if that's something that you're interested in for help with VSLO or ERAS, personal statements, interviews, or if you're looking to score well on the boards, that's what we're here for. Just know we're a resource in your corner, whether it's now or at some point down the road if you need it. And if you guys want to chat with us for free, you can absolutely do that. And so just scan the QR code and fill that out. Someone from our team will reach out to you to talk to you about your situation, where you're at, and what advice we have for you and how we can help. And I think we had a lot of amazing questions. So I don't know if there's anything left for the breakout room, but we'll give it a shot anyway. I'm sure you guys will be interested in kind of asking some specialty specific questions in there with each of us. So I know everyone here on the panel besides me will do like a dedicated specialty specific breakout room. So Dr. Cater is OBGYN, Neri is ophthalmology, Dr. Khan is ortho. Who else do we have? We have Milena for derm. We have Vinit for IM, Ryan for anesthesia. And then I will be IR, radiology, and anything else. I've been doing this for a long time. I've seen everyone's situation, so I'm happy to chat with anyone. So hop in and ask away, and then we'll kind of we'll wrap up. All right, guys, we're gonna wrap it up. It's the top of the hour. Thanks everyone for joining. I think we posted the strategy call link in the chat. If you didn't get it, if you guys want to chat with us for free, fill that out. Otherwise, thanks everyone for spending the time with us. I hope you got value from it. I hope you learned a lot. And thanks to the panelists for being awesome and spending time with us tonight.